With 2019 coming to an end, it's time to look back at my favorite coaster days of the year. When I did this for 2018, it was stacked full of grand openings and epic days at the biggest parks across the country. 2019 was a little different. I took a trip across the Southeast in early April, and then decided to hit all of the smaller, more forgotten parks west of the Rockies as my main road trip in August. And then I finished off my traveling with a trip to New Jersey in October. One of the main differences in 2019 compared to 2018 was the growth of my channel and the ability for me to meet up with different people at my home park, as well as the parks that I travel to. And that's given me some of the most memorable days of the year. I want to start with an honorable mention for the grand opening of Nickelodeon Universe at the American Dream Mall. Thanks again to Jason from New Jersey Coasters for making that happen for me, and it was an unforgettable experience to be there for a park's grand opening. But unfortunately, when it comes to coaster days, it wasn't all that great. I rode Slime Streak once and Shellraiser 3 times, and I got to watch the Half Pipe and Shredder test all day without opening, and Sandy's Blasting Broncos sit there dormant. And when I went to Great Adventure for Fright Fest that night, El Toro blew a drive tire and was down for the night. So despite being a cool experience, when it comes to coasters, it was a bit of a letdown. I'll leave the link to the vlogs and any other videos I've done for this day and all of these days from the list in the description. There were a few notable days that I got to spend at my home park at Six Flags Magic Mountain, and I'll run them down in chronological order. First, there was the day of CoasterCon, June 16th, and even though I wasn't an ACE member, I got to hang out with some of the people coming in from out of town, including Bob, aka BK Photo Page from Cleveland, who was there for the first time. For whatever reason, despite it being a Sunday in June, the park wasn't crowded at all, so we knocked out almost every credit in half a day. About a month later, the park invited me out to a hard hat construction tour for West Coast Racers on July 19th. At this point, the ride was maybe a little more than halfway done, and it was really cool getting up close and personal with the construction site and seeing parts of the park that I'd never seen before. Almost a month after that, my 6-year-old daughter Sophie finally reached the 48-inch mark, which meant that a whole lot of new rides were unlocked for her at Magic Mountain. And although she wasn't ready for too many of them yet, we all decided that she was ready for her first looping coaster, and we rode Revolution for the first time. This was a huge milestone for her, and on August 11th, she conquered her first inversion and found her new #1 coaster. Almost a month later, on September 7th, I got to meet and hang out with 2 of the coolest guys in the community, Max, aka the Coaster Dude 808, and Cliff, who you may know as Analog Thrills. This was Max's first time at the park, and it was a really great day to go before the Fright Fest crowds overtook the park. Speaking of Fright Fest crowds, that's exactly what I ran into on October 12th when my brand new employee, Myke, formerly from the Coaster Idiots, came out for his first vlog under his new management. This was the beginning of an epic war between me and El Toro Ryan that stretched across the country, and even though the park was packed that day and Myke had to get a flash pass, it was a lot of fun hanging out with a group of coaster nerds. My number 6 favorite coaster day of the year was my return to Busch Gardens Williamsburg on April 6th. This was a park that we were supposed to spend a full day at in July of 2018, but it was the only park on our list that we had to skip because of weather. So we decided to do a whole separate trip in 2019 to make up for the bad luck we had on the East Coast in 2018, including visiting Busch Gardens for the first time in 11 years. My trip to the park in 2008 was such a distant memory, and I needed to get back here to experience all of the great rides I'd already ridden, plus the new rides that they had put in since 2012. It was a Saturday around spring break, so I was pretty terrified that the crowds would be insane. But we got there at rope drop, and we knocked out all of the credits within the first 2 hours before the crowds rolled in and pretty much made riding anything else impossible. We did end up waiting a while to get re-rides on Alpengeist and Apollo's Chariot, but I didn't mind the crowds too much because this park is so photogenic, and I spent the rest of my time there getting pictures and video. This trip definitely secured its spot as one of the best parks in the country. My number 5 favorite coaster day was back on August 18th when I was sent out to Dallas on business and decided to come out early on Sunday to hit up Six Flags Over Texas for a few hours. I went out there by myself, but I was joined by Marshall, aka Coaster Engineer. I'd never been to this park on a day that wasn't extremely crowded, so it was really great to see on this day that was well over 100 degrees, the park was extremely empty. I got there around 12, and the park closed at 7, so I didn't have a ton of time here, but since the park was so empty, I got to ride everything, I got to hear all of the park secrets from Marshall, and I even got a little bit of airtime room on New Texas Giant thanks to Caleb. And pretty much nerd out for the day, working off just a couple hours of sleep, and enjoying my first empty day at Over Texas. My number 4 favorite coaster day was on September 1st at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. This is another park that I had never experienced without crowds, and even though it wasn't empty, I was surprised that the park wasn't that packed, even though it was Sunday of Labor Day weekend. I was able to get a 2-person flash pass for only $30 thanks to my Diamond Elite Pass, and I was able to get on everything without having to wait. I was surprised that some of the rides that never seemed to be open, like Vertical Velocity and Harley Quinn, were both up and running. I was thinking that it would be one of those stereotypical not-so-great days that Discovery Kingdom is known for, but we actually had a great time. I was just there in June 2018, and the park was way more packed than it was this time, and even with a flash pass, we had to wait a long time to get on everything. This trip on Labor Day weekend was the opposite, and it gave me a much better perception of this park, and I'll be back there next year. My number 3 favorite coaster day was on October 26th at Six Flags Great Adventure. We were out there for the opening of Nickelodeon Universe, but we had to take an extra day to hit up Great Adventure. You don't fly across the country without getting rides on El Toro. We had popped into the park the night before to ride El Toro, but it was closed for the night, and even though it was down in the morning, it reopened a few hours later. We were joined by Jason from New Jersey Coasters, and we got our first ride on the safari in the morning. We also met up with El Toro Ryan. Well, actually, he caught me plotting to steal El Toro, but we made up afterwards and he agreed to let me take it. And we rode El Toro together in the back row, which was legendary. This was the first of my 8 rides on El Toro that night, which was aided by the fact that we had a gold flash pass. I had a rushed, hectic trip to Great Adventure in 2018, so this trip in 2019 allowed me to do a lot more of the rides that I missed out on. I still didn't get to do everything I wanted this time around either, but I'll get back there this summer. We ended our time at the park with a marathon of El Toro, which included seeing Mariah Carey crash the Toro party and even get some private trains for her and her entourage. Finishing the night with 8 rides on El Toro was the perfect way to end an exhausting weekend. My number 2 favorite coaster day was December 21st, West Coast Racers Membership Preview Day. Pretty much every enthusiast in Southern California came out for the event, and there was a bunch of us that gathered at the gate at 9 a.m. for a media preview of the preview. I got to ride it twice with Theme Park Tracker before the crowds rolled in, and most of the day was just hanging around the new coaster and getting pictures and video and nerding out with all the enthusiasts there. I ended up getting 2 more rides on it later in the day, and even came back at night for 1 more ride. I even got evac'd off the last train, my first evac on a coaster on its opening day since Railblazer in June of 2018. I even got my first ride on Slingshot thanks to Tim, aka the roller coaster dude, and even squeezed in a ride on Viper with some of the few people out there who still really appreciate it for the great ride that it is. Opening days are always so much fun. This was my 4th opening day over the last 2 years, and by far the one that had the most enthusiasts, so it was definitely one of the best days of the year. My number 1 favorite coaster day was August 25th, my return to Lagoon. It was the first time I'd been there in 2 years, and that trip came right before I took over the Airtime Thrills Instagram page, so that seems like a lifetime ago. Based on my trip there on a Saturday in July of 2017, where the crowds were surprisingly light, I wasn't expecting it to be too crowded on a Sunday in late August, and I wasn't disappointed. The best thing about this trip is that I got to bring Sophie, and Lagoon has a lot of kid-friendly coasters. Most of the rides have height limits below 48 inches, and she picked up 9 of the 10 credits. She only skipped Cannibal since that seems to be a little bit too much for a 6-year-old. She also rode Jetstar 2, which I found out later has like a 50-inch height limit, but she still rode it without getting measured. Oh well. It was a lot of fun riding all of those new coasters with her, including her 2nd and 3rd inverting coasters, Colossus and Wicked. I was also dying to get back to this park to get good pictures and video, which I was able to do. So between the nice weather, light crowds, having the whole family there at the park, and riding Cannibal a bunch of times, my day at Lagoon on August 25th was the standout coaster day of 2019 for me. 2019 was also great for this channel. I went from less than 1,000 subscribers at the beginning to over 18,000 by the end, and I'm hoping to grow the channel even more in 2020. Let's end this video with some of the notable sights and sounds of 2019. Alright, you know what's next? Pray for me. Why? So I said I wasn't going to do any more red eyes after Cedar Point last year, but here I am once again. So we are leaving Silverwood, and this area right here is pretty big out in the front. They could really use a RMC. Jim didn't kill us. He almost did. Thanks for not doing that. So Shellraiser, excellent. Top 50 for sure. Because someone puked on the train ahead of us. Guess what day it is? And did you know that today Sophie is gonna get 50 credits? Those Jaguar seats, not meant for 2 dudes. We just got a front row, pouring rain. That hurt a lot. But apparently it's too windy to operate any of these rides. That's a new record for us. 8 times in one day. Jim sprayed gas all over the door, so now it smells like gas in here. Just take me to Six Flags America.
Okay, it's your funeral.
We just got the Rottenugger. So, ow.
Well, he's going down.
So he did the thing. I wouldn't recommend the thing.
Yeah, don't do the thing.
Don't do the
Don't
thing.
try this at home, kids.
Don't do the thing. We're here at Magic Mountain, and there's a fire right across the street.
Safety's #1 priority, but having fun second.
Hey.
It kind of like whimpers, like.
Do you hear that in your nightmares? The craziest wild mouse I've ever been on.
I've been on crazier rides.
I need air. I know everything about this park, okay? It's gonna fit.
He said it's gonna fit.
I checked Google Earth.
Google Earth says it's gonna fit. There's the close sign. You need to see that close sign.
Where are they? Do you keep tracking your kids, Ryan?
That's messed up, Ryan.
Can't believe you, Ryan.
You gotta take care of your kids.
Ryan.
Hey, Ryan. So while you're on the ride, I'm gonna steal all your subs, okay? You're not gonna squish me? You promise? Skyline. You suck at making coasters. Just stop. So that sucked. Well, would Six Flags call it crazy coaster if it wasn't a coaster? Oh, they would. I have some thinking to do because that was bad.
Oh my God! Dad!
So we're gonna come back and ride Cannibal later in a couple years. Like 2 years. And you're gonna ride, whoa.
You still have 2 more tickets.
But is this park really that bad? Yes.